Hi, I'm Claire, and these are my 16 most anticipated science fiction and fantasy releases of 2016. Before I start with the video proper, I want to remind you there is a giveaway currently running on this channel until the 8th of January 2016. So if you're watching before that, check the link in the description box below. That'll take you to my blog and you can check out the prizes, which are obviously books, and see how to enter. A few disclaimers before we start the list itself. Number one, this is a list of my most anticipated reads of 2016. This is by no means an exhaustive list of amazing things that are coming out in 2016. It's just a list of the things that I thought would most appeal to me. I have also restricted this list to just standalones and books that are the beginning of a new series. Starting in January, we have 3 things that I'm quite excited about. First, there is Truth Witch by Susan Dennard, and that comes out from Tor on the 16th. I don't know anything about this author. I've never read any work of hers. However, the description of the book and the blurb on the cover from Robin Hobb, no less, have gotten me quite excited about this book. Robin Hobb is one of my favorite authors ever, and she says, highway robbery, swordplay, deep friendships, treachery, magic, piracy on the high seas, and romance. This book will delight you. So that, I find, is enough for me. On the 21st, we have The Deep Sea Diver's Syndrome by Serge Brussolo, and that comes out from Melville House Publishing. This book is set in a world where some people can dive into other people's dreams and maybe memories, I'm not certain. The process does take a toll on the health of the diver though, and our main protagonist is a man who's been doing this for a really long time, and his health is not the best anymore, so when he gets offered a job to kind of go and dive further than anyone ever has, he takes it. This one is particularly interesting to me because Brussolo is a fairly prolific author of genre fiction in France, and I read a number of his books growing up, so I know I kind of like his style. But this is his first book to be published in English translation, and if you've been around the channel for a little while, you know I am quite passionate about translated books because I used to read a lot of them when I was growing up, and there are not many books that are written in languages other than English that do get translated into English. A lot of the translation happens the other way around, from English to other languages. I'm always on the lookout for things that are published in other languages first and then get translated into English. And finally, for January, we've got a book that a lot of people on BookTube SFF have put on their most anticipated lists, and that is All the Birds in the Sky by Charlie Jane Anders, and this one comes out on the 26th of January from Titan Books. A lot of us in the science fiction and fantasy community know Anders from her work on IO9, and that is also where I first came across her. I really enjoy her Game of Thrones reviews that I try and read after each episode of the show, but what's really sold me on this book was not Anders' non-fiction, it was the fact that it is apparently about 2 people who used to be friends as children, and now they meet again as adults, and they clash because one of them is a scientist and the other is a magic user. And I am fascinated by the interaction between magic and science in fantasy. This is why I love books like the Natural History of Dragons series by Marie Brennan, because it goes into this like studying magic as a science type of thing, and I think the clash between the science and the magic in that book will be what is most interesting for me personally. I have only got one book that I'm quite excited for in February, and I have shamelessly stolen it from Nicole's list over at Nicole's Adventures in SFF. She mentioned this book, I'd not heard of it, but it sounded so perfect, I added it straight away. It is A Criminal Magic by Lee Kelly, and it's being published by Saga Press on the 2nd of February. The one-line pitch that Nicole gave that made me immediately write this book down is prohibition but with magic, where instead of banning alcohol, the government has banned magic, and there is a magical mafia. I am all there for that book. I'm very excited about it. I've got two things for March. The first is The Girl from Everywhere by Heidi Heilig. I don't know how to say that name, I'm really sorry. That is being published by Hotkey Books on the 3rd of March. And the entire reason I put it on this list is that the story is set on a time-traveling pirate ship. Time-traveling pirate ship. Yes, sign me up. I'm there for this book, completely 100%. The story is about Nix, whose father runs the pirate ship, and he decides to travel back in time to before Nix was born, when her mother was still alive. So it's completely understandable that he wants to do that. At the same time, I've read a lot of time travel fiction and my mind is screaming time travel paradox, don't do that. On the 15th of March, we've got The Winged Histories by Sophia Samatar, and that one comes out from Small Beer Press. Now, this is a literary fantasy, and I don't read a lot of those, but the premise of it sounded fascinating. It's about 4 women who are struggling to work in this kind of historical fantasy type of setting, and they are struggling to not only be independent and be successful in that world, but also to make sure that whatever contributions that they make to the world is remembered by history. And this one sounds fascinating to me because I always enjoyed my history modules at university, and I still really enjoy kind of casually learning about history now, but it's only in recent years that I've heard more and more about the forgotten, invisible women of history who make great contributions but aren't remembered necessarily in the same way that a man would be who had done the same thing. And I think it's one of those issues that will be absolutely fascinating to look at through fiction. For April, I've got 2 things, the first of which is Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna Maguire, and this one is being published by Tor.com's new novella imprint on the 5th. So obviously this one is a shorter work, but the reason I really can't wait to read it is that it explores the idea of characters who go on adventures in fairy tales and what happens when they come back. This is an idea that Shauna Maguire has already explored in some of her music before. She makes wonderful music, and the title song of one of her albums is Wicked Girls, and it's about Susan from the Narnia books and Wendy from Peter Pan and what happens to them when they come back, what's left for them, just normal life after they've had this wonderful magical adventure. This novella apparently explores that in having, I think, a school or an institution or something like that for characters that have had adventures and then have returned to the normal world. Maguire has managed to make me feel so many feels about this idea in one song. I can't wait to see what she can do with an actual novella where you get to be in some of these characters' heads and see their points of view. Next, we've got a book that I've already got an ARC for, and that is Hex by Thomas Ode Heuvelt, translated by Nancy Forrest Flyer, and this one is being published by Harder and Staden on the 28th of April. This one makes the list because it's a translated book and because the author, who is Dutch, has won a Hugo Award for his short fiction last year. So I feel like I can trust that the author writes fairly well since he won a Hugo, and I feel like I can also trust that this book, which had a marketing campaign that came with a kit to sew your own eyes, will be creepy as all get out. I am looking forward to talking about this one on my Speculative World reviews of books in translation series. However, it is going to creep the hell out of me. I've got one book for May, and that is The Geek Feminist Revolution by Cameron Hurley, which is being published on the 31st of May by Tor Books. Cameron Hurley won a Hugo Award a couple of years ago for her fan writing. Specifically, she won for an essay called We Have Always Fought, which discusses women's places in conflicts and wars throughout history, and how the image that we have of historical women is not at all a true reflection of the place that women most likely had in history, given the research that we've currently got. It's had a big impact on me, specifically on my writing, because I'm trying to write a novel at the moment that's a historical fiction, and so obviously it has female characters in history. It's been hugely important to me personally, this one piece of work, and I also read her blog and generally enjoy her non-fiction, so I definitely want to see what else she has to say. I've got 2 books for June. First is Escapology by Ren Warren, and it comes out on the 7th of June from Titan Books. This one I'm looking forward to because I've met Ren before, and she's a fascinating, really intelligent person who also, by the way, has a YouTube channel. If you want to go and check that out, I'll put a link in the box below. This book is set in a world that is split between a virtual reality and then the real IRL kind of world. And our protagonist, Shock Pao, is the absolute best thief that there is within the virtual world. However, in his real life, in the real world, his life really sucks, and it sucks so much that he ends up being forced to accept a job breaking into a big corporate databank. This sounds like a really cool premise to me. I tend to be drawn to books that have a virtual reality kind of aspect. I always find it really interesting to see how authors portray that in their books. Next, we've got False Hearts by Laura Lamb, and this one is being published on the 16th of June by Macmillan. This book makes the list because there are a number of things in it that generally I'm really interested in. I don't know the kind of 1-sentence pitch for this one, however, it does have twins who were raised by a cult, and also secrets and identity swaps, and those all kind of conjure up the image of a book that I would really enjoy. I don't know why, but I really find the cults oddly fascinating. I just like watching documentaries about them. For July, I've only got 1 book, and that is Ghost Talkers by Mary Robinette Kowal, which comes out the 5th of July from Tor Books. The novel takes place during World War I, and we follow Ginger, who is a medium. She can talk to ghosts, and she is sent in with the medium corps, whose job is to be in like the back of the Allied lines and wait for soldiers who have been killed to come back as ghosts, to give them some type of information to help the war effort before they completely pass on. And her fiance is a soldier who's at the front whilst she's in the back of the lines doing her job as a medium, and this just sounds like it has so much potential for being heartbreaking. If this book is anything like Mary Robinette Kowal's previous series, The Glamorous Histories, it should have a really interesting magic system going on as well, so I cannot wait for that. For August, I've only got 1 book, and that is The Last Days of New Paris by China Mieville, which comes out from Del Rey, and I believe the current release date is just August, and we don't have an actual day. Now this one I'm quite interested in because it is set in World War II France, and it concerns a group of artists and activists who live in the free part of France, and they are making a bomb, but it's a surrealist bomb. It sets off and leaves chaos in its wake, but all of the chaos, instead of being like death and goriness, is just surrealist stuff. That sounds so strange. I cannot wait to see how he deals with all the weird stuff, but within World War II France, which is obviously a period of history and a space in history that I've had a lot of cultural exposure to, because we have a lot of those narratives in France. So I can't wait to see what he does with that. In September, we've got Ever Fair by Nisi Shawl, and that comes out on the 6th from Tor Books. And this one I'm really excited about because it is steampunk, and I love me some steampunk. but it is steampunk that is set in Africa. I mean, I'm saying steampunk, but my notes say neo-Victorian alternate history, so it might not be exactly the same, but I've never read any steampunk or neo-Victorian alternate history that was set in Africa, and I think it'll be really interesting to see how the kind of tropes of that genre adapt to being in a setting that they've not really been explored a lot in, if that makes any sense. Finally, I've got two things for October. First, we've got 6 Weeks by Mer Lafferty, which comes out from Orbit Books, and we don't really have a set date. They started by saying autumn, and then Mer recently said October on one of her podcasts, so around that time. Anyway, the book is a clone murder mystery in space, and if that is not an awesome pitch, then I don't know what is. The novel is set on a generation spaceship where instead of being put in suspension pods so that they can sleep for the very, very long journey, the crew are all clones, and whenever they die of old age, they get born again in a new clone body so that they can continue and reach the destination. So the story starts when all of the clones wake up at the same time, just revived in a new clone body, and they realize that all of them were murdered and one of them has to be the murderer, but they don't know which one. And finally, on the 20th of October, we've got the one and only sequel that I allowed myself on this list really because I thought 16 most anticipated in 2016 sounded better than 15 in 2016. It is A Close and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers, which is the sequel to The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, which was one of my favorite books of 2015. So I'm really, really excited to see this one coming out next year and to read more about the adventures of our motley crew on the Wayfarer. So this was my list of 16 most anticipated science fiction and fantasy releases of 2016. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know in the comments down below if there are things that you can't wait to read that I haven't mentioned. If you'd like to see more from me, you can check the sidebar right here for more videos. And if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button for more videos from me every week. I've been Claire, thanks so much for watching, and see you soon.